Please.
Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Looks over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown! Oladipo to win it.
Another one!
He got it!
Another one! Huge hole! He's at the 30! He's gonna go! 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor!
Galloway finds Rob Finnessy, who fires the three in.
He hit it!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard. I hope you've had a great week. And if not, we're going to wrap it up in fine fashion for you. Dylan Sinn with me, as always, from Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. Dylan, how are you doing, sir?
I'm good, Jim. I'm good. Glad to be on, as always.
Glad to have you. Look forward to talking to Alec Lasley from the Hoosier later. Get you caught up on things there. And Zach Osterman from the Indy Star as well. So another full day of lineup. Jeffrey the Greek not with us this week. Off to, I don't know what he's doing. Vacation maybe. I'm just looking up at a comment already on here that it caught me by surprise. It said that they heard on a different show that Dane Fife has been causing problems. That's something I don't even give credence to. Yeah, that's ridiculous. First of all, that's one of the most ridiculous things I've heard this year. So I just find that funny. I think that's people that are looking to cause problems, especially when someone says, I've heard. Well, unless I'm in practice or I'm getting it from a source that I know that is in there, because I'm pretty close. I'm here in Bloomington. I'm there all the time. That's not something I'm going to even consider believing. Dylan, I'm not sure if you even have a take on that, but that just makes me laugh. That one.
Yeah, no, I feel pretty much the same way. Yeah, it's not something that a anyone really knows, and b it doesn't seem like something Dane Fife would be doing. He has a great reputation in this industry, so yeah, I don't give any credence to that until we hear way more than kind of just some rumblings.
And that is almost ridiculous to hear. Yeah, that would do no good for any of those people that's mentioned, Dane included, and that would be ridiculous. So stop listening to other places that don't have accurate information, number one, and so that's about as good as I can go with that. They do need to get some recruits in here, but they're on the way. I mean, there's no doubt Indiana needs better guard play. We're not going to question that, but they've got some great guards coming. They didn't build Rome in a day, much as you'd like for it to happen. Woody inherited what he inherited, and they had to quickly put in what they put in, and it hasn't gone quite as smoothly, but they have three winnable games to me that they need to win, that we've talked about over and over and over. The toughest of those games is the Rutgers game, and that's going to be, depending on how tough that game is whether or not that Mr. Ron Harper Jr., I know he hurt his hand the other night in a game, how extensive that injury is.
Yeah. Rutgers right now is I don't know how winnable of a game that is if they're playing at full strength. They are really, really good right now. And so you got to hope they cool off by the time IU plays them. But yeah, this is not going to be easy going down the stretch here. They're gonna need to pile up some wins. I think they probably need to win those 3 games and probably split against Ohio State and Purdue. Would be the take that I would have in terms of
really.
Yeah, I unless you're going to make a fairly deep run in the Big Ten tournament, I don't think you can go 9-11 in the Big Ten this year. Or I guess 10-10. 10-10 it'd be dicey, I think.
I think that they're back to this same position they were 5 years ago, was it the first year, Archie's first year? I remember going to Chicago for the Big Ten tournament, and they needed to win one game. They needed to beat Ohio State. It was
that was second year. That was Romeo's
16.
year. Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of in that situation here. If they win those 3 games, I think they get in. Well, it depends on who they lose to in the Big Ten tournament. If they were to lose the first round game, really, so you're right. I agree with you. But I just don't. The Ohio State game is a game that they can go win as well. It's a road game. I know that makes it even tougher, but they beaten Ohio State, which means Ohio State didn't handle them as well. And Trace Jackson-Davis did a decent job on Liddell. Liddell didn't hurt him in that game. He didn't kill him, but they've got a shot in that one. I don't give them much of a shot in West Lafayette. I'm gonna be honest with you. It just that's just life. It's not this year. Next year or the year after that, that'll change. This year, no, I'm not going to give them much of a chance at West Lafayette. Not that Purdue is not beatable. It's Indiana, and it's different for them. It's not Rutgers coming in. It's not someone else that can actually knock them off because they're not as geeked up. The crowd won't be as geeked up. Man, when Indiana rolls in, it's a different situation. So I don't see them being able to. They haven't shown me anything that shows that they can go win that game this season. That's okay. They'll get that in the later days. But that's the thing, Dylan. They haven't shown that killer instinct in a lot of games.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why the recent struggles have been so frustrating. I think for a lot of people has been that the killer instinct has been absent for a while now, right? And it's not just this season; it's been going back for a long time. And you kind of hoped after they won that game against Purdue, after they did beat Ohio State at home, you kind of thought maybe they were starting to develop that a little bit as a team. But they've still lost so many games this year that felt winnable. I mean, every college basketball team loses games that they think are winnable.
Like last night, Michigan goes on the road to Iowa and wins a game. There was one that was winnable. It's not that you were expected that they had to win it, expected to win, but I was there in Iowa City, and they could have easily won that game.
Yes, I mean, they were up by 11 in that game, right? They felt like they were rolling. Same thing at Wisconsin at the Kohl Center. They were up by 22. They felt like they were rolling. Even against Wisconsin just the other day, they felt like they had the game in hand, and they just couldn't get it done at the end. And I feel like that has been the story of this program for the last 5 years now. And it was, you hoped that when the coaching change was made, that something that could get fixed immediately was that, where you just had that finishing kick, right? And that hasn't happened yet. And it's still possible that it develops this season. It's possible they play good enough basketball that they don't need to win a ton of close games down the stretch in order to make the tournament. But it's frustrating for a lot of people that it hasn't developed yet. And so these next couple, now they find themselves in a position where you need to go on a finishing kick at the end of the season to get where you want to go to break this NCAA tournament drought that you're on, and they're going to need to find it real quick here.
Yeah, and that's the thing. To me, that's the easiest thing is the will to win. To get, I always thought that it's tough. It's easier to get a team together to win than getting your offense together, than getting your defense together, because the will to win, it should be there, man. You should just have this overriding unity that's a will to win, that when it comes down to winning, whatever it takes to do this as a team, I'm in it to win. Haven't seen that. Still see too many individual breakdowns. Guys not knowing exactly what to do. The other night was a classic example of that. Indiana didn't know what to do to win the game. They got the ball inside to Trace Jackson-Davis, which is what Mike Woodson wanted, and he wanted Trace Jackson-Davis to score and draw the foul. Didn't want him to kick it back out to Xavier for that shot, but that's what happened. Then they get over there in the corner with Parker Stewart, and that looked all discombobulated. And that is kind of describes their season. You know, when it comes down in a microcosm in the last winning seconds, what do we do? And it's like way too late in the year to be having that problem. And I don't get that.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. And just for Mike Woodson to say after the game, which I'm sure you've talked about already, is he talked about they froze, and that is it's tough that that's happening at this point in the season. It really, considering I think a lot of people thought that win over Purdue was something where you could kind of hold on to that as a team and say, look, we won that one. And so when you're in the huddle at the end against Wisconsin and you need a basket or you need a stop, that you can look back on that and say, look, we did it once, we'll do it again. Let's go out there and get a stop. And it hasn't really developed that way.
Nope. Alec Lasley will join us later. We'll talk more about Indiana basketball. The Big Ten, their TV deal is expiring at perfect timing because you're going to have Fox, CBS, Disney, and NBC all vying for the rights to the Big Ten. And the Big Ten it's probably the most valuable TV package, sports package. It's the Midwest. It's just that is the great TV audience. And the Big Ten is going to continue to, Big Ten teams are going to continue to benefit from that because of that. But yeah, Jim Delaney, you can only wish that Jim Delaney was still there to do this, to be there for this negotiation, because he was the guy, he's the architect that has made the Big Ten what it is right now, in my mind.
I saw yesterday a story that NBC really wants the Big Ten. They're going to make a offer in excess of $1 billion because they want to pair the Big Ten with Notre Dame. They feel like that is, in terms of their content, is kind of the perfect setup for them. So they're going to make a huge offer. And
with that, everybody talks about Notre Dame wanting to hold on to their independence because they make so much money. They don't make more money than if they were in the Big Ten.
Right. Now, they want their independence for other reasons. They've made clear they are not looking to join a conference. They've made clear that they are not in the market, as it were. But that might be another step toward maybe shoving them in that direction. Another step might be if they end up going to 8 teams instead of 12 in the playoff, and you end up kind of forcing their hand. That's why there have been rumors that's why the ACC is holding out, or at least in part why the ACC is holding out for 8 teams instead of 12, because they want to try to force Notre Dame's hand into joining the ACC rather than staying independent. So Notre Dame is at the center of all of this in terms of negotiations for both this TV deal and negotiations for the playoffs. So it's kind of interesting to see as we go forward here how that plays out, because they have stridently said throughout this entire kind of year and change that we've been seeing these changes in college sports that they are not interested in joining anything. So we'll see whether that changes.
But but the NBC Big Ten, that still would be gigantic.
Absolutely.
And now you've got the streaming. Everyone has their own streaming deal. NBC has Peacock. CBS was going to want you to subscribe to Paramount. And Fox still needs sporting events. But then ESPN, they've gotten so many others. I don't know that they could win this one, because everybody else is this is the biggest chunk of a college basketball pie, really, from a league standpoint. It's just big. Now the SEC is growing, and it has more teams, but it's still not from a basketball standpoint. From a football side, that's different. But the Big Ten is still, I don't know if it's the most valuable conference or not, because of the SEC having more teams, but it's got to be still close.
Yeah, I believe right now it is the second most valuable conference behind the SEC, just because of the football aspect of how many huge brands there are in the SEC. But what's going to happen is that because the Big Ten's contract is up right now, they are going to get the biggest, in all likelihood, TV deal in the history of college sports for a conference, and that's going to set the market. And the SEC is going to command even more than that when their contract is up next. I'm not sure when, in a few years here, but it's going to create a huge bidding war for whoever does not get the Big Ten. It's obviously they've been on CBS for a long time, and they have a contract with ESPN, but it's going to be to re-up. It's going to be insane, the bidding war over that SEC once the Big Ten sets the market here.
All right, we've got lots more coming up. Alec Lasley from thehoosier.com is going to join us. We'll be back with that, brought to you by our great friends at Southern Stone Restaurant. Man, you need to get out there and have a bite. Located at Patterson and Rogers here in Bloomington. Back with more on Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this. Whether it's a celebration or just a relaxing night away from the kitchen, don't make the same old choices. Try something fresh and new. Southern Stone Restaurant at Rogers and Patterson in Bloomington is open for lunch and dinner. Southern Stone offers comfort food with Southern. There you go. That way we don't have to listen to that. Thank you, sir. Hey, I noticed, Will, when you came in, there was an echo. You may have a microphone open when you enter.
Do what?
I said I noticed when you came in, there was an echo of us talking.
Oh, yeah, I had an extra mic open. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. Alec Lasley, how's it going?
Good. How's it going?
Going great. What's new, man?
Not a whole lot. Obviously, it's going to be weird to not have a game this weekend. I think a lot of people are maybe frustrated with that one, having that one get pushed to Monday. We'll see, but that's going to be weird, especially at this time of the year.
They're going to get to face a semi-tired Ohio State team, so it might not be the worst thing for them.
Yeah, I mean, hey, they need all the help they can get at this point.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What's new with you, man?
Not a whole lot. Just keep doing me. Seems like you're back from your little couple day getaway back in the warm climate of Indiana.
Yeah, it was great last night. Awesome getting home in the sleet, and it was cold. It's I don't even know what's the temperature out there right now. That can't be right. There ain't no way. There we go. Trying to tell me it was 43. 18 sounds a little more accurate.
Yeah, you're probably still stuck in Florida time over there.
I wish I was stuck in Florida time. Anything new happening?
Mostly just the news of Ado Thero, the 2022 guard who came and visited.
Yep.
That's obviously biggest recruiting stuff at this point. Outside of that, obviously just the bubble watch and the.
That's Reynolds Family Dentistry, 812-246-3368.
Hey, this is John, the producer with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We're now a part of the Rivals Network. TheHoosier.com is where you can find complete coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and plenty more. Simply go to TheHoosier.com and sign up. It's free. You can also find full episodes of Indiana Sports Beat Radio on the homepage or on the station every week, Monday through Friday. If we're not on a station where you live, we should be. Ask for Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Friday. Joined by Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette, and now Alec Lasley from thehoosier.com joins us. How are you doing, Alec?
Good, guys. How are you doing?
Can't complain. That's all he does is complain. Just kidding.
Excuse you, Jim. You know, I'm very level-headed. I feel like that's my brand here, and I try to protect it. So, yeah.
Exactly. It's exactly the truth. He is telling the truth. What's the temperature like there in Fort Wayne?
It's not bad here. It snowed a lot last night. We got it was raining all yesterday, then it snowed all last night. So we woke up to another dusting here, but it's not super cold out this morning, I believe. If I check my weather app here, this is a visual medium. It is 18 degrees actually. So yeah,
same as it is here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just checked, same as it is here. That's too cold for me. I mean,
Especially
snow
after it got up
outside.
to 50 the other day.
I was jealous. Yeah, I was out on the deck the other night. Not tonight, baby, and not last night. Just getting in the door. Yeah, you met, and off the air you mentioned, Alec, no game this weekend, man. Or that's just weird, especially with the length of time in between games and at the time of the season right now. I don't know if it's good or bad for Indiana.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see, right? I mean, you never want to have to play 3 games in a week, which you're going to have to do, right, with a Monday, Thursday, and then Sunday game. So that's not always ideal, especially at this time of the season when you're already struggling with your 2 big guys with Race and Trace, obviously playing a large amount of minutes and them having to shoulder a lot of the load and responsibility. So we'll see how that works. I mean, the only positive, which Dylan said, right, is, you may get a little bit of a tired Ohio State team, which is obviously going to be somewhat of a positive. But I mean, at the same time, if you lose that Ohio State game, and that just puts a lot more stress and pressure on those 2 very winnable games with Maryland and Minnesota, and 2 games that you can't lose in a short week. That's just a lot of pressure. So I mean, I think you look at Monday's game as close of a must-win as possible for Indiana, especially at this point in the season with everything going on right now with the 4-game losing streak. So there's a lot of things that need to go Indiana's way here coming down the stretch, and it's kind of disappointing when you look at where this team was 2 weeks ago, even a week and a half ago, and you see the kind of 180 that this team really took, and you really point to that Northwestern game the night before, and everything that happened there is kind of that unraveling of what potentially could be the unraveling of this season.
Well, the game against Wisconsin the other day, they put themselves in the position to win that, and they took themselves out of the position to win that. So when they can't do that at home, it really makes you wonder how the hell they're going to manage to do this on the road in a hostile environment, because they had the recipe and it was right there for the taking and just could not close it out. And that's twice that they've had Wisconsin dead to rights and just could not close them out. And it wasn't because Wisconsin did anything super special. They didn't make a lot of mistakes toward the end, and Johnny Davis is a bad man. Don't get me wrong, but they did not do what they needed to do to close it out.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the most disappointing part, right? I mean, you've really leaned on Trace Jackson Davis the majority of the season, and obviously throughout the entire part of that game. But when it came down to crunch time, he didn't have a shot in the last 2.5, 3 minutes there of the game, and that's something that can't happen. Obviously, there were a lot of different double teams and a lot of different defensive actions that were thrown at him, but there's absolutely no way that ball should leave his hands and not return almost immediately, just due to the sheer fact that offense was running through him, and he was getting fouled almost every single time he wasn't attempting a field goal. So the fact that they seem to be okay with letting some of the other guys take some of those shots. Obviously, throughout the period of the game, you would want an Xavier Johnson or a Trey Galloway to take an open 3 if it were there. But under 2.5 minutes, when those possessions are going to be limited regardless, you can't have that happen. And obviously, they got a little bit lucky with a few of those shots being as bad as they were. That Galloway 3 that obviously kind of bounced right into Johnson's hands for that layup. But outside of that, I mean, they kind of went back to the stale offense that they have almost every 3 minutes and under in every second half. And I just, obviously you point to the guard play, and that's the huge issue with this team that seems to keep rearing its head over the course of these 5 seasons here. But there just has to come a time where one of these guys knows how to make a play and makes the play that's needed. And I think you look at this team and you have really no confidence that that's going to happen. And so you almost need that 20-point lead going into the half because you don't feel too comfortable with any of these second half leads that Indiana has, no matter how much or how little time's on the scoreboard, just due to the fact that the guards can't play at a consistent level from game to game, let alone half to half or even minute to minute in this Indiana season.
Dylan?
Yeah, I felt it was interesting. I think one of the most interesting moments of this during this losing streak has been right after the Wisconsin game when basically Trace said that he would want Xavier Johnson to take that shot 10 times out of 10, and then Mike Woodson came out there and disagreed and said, I want Trace taking that shot. And I thought it was really interesting that like Trace trusts his teammates almost more than Mike Woodson trusts some of his players right now, which is kind of an interesting dynamic. And it was interesting to me, especially because the game plan obviously against Wisconsin was feed Trace until we can't feed him anymore. And it worked for 39 minutes. And then in the most important moment, Trace was like, I'm gonna give another guy a shot here. And I understand the impulse, right? Like it's a smart basketball play. You have three guys collapsing on you. You have a guy wide open at the top of the key who's a 35% 3-point shooter. It makes a lot of sense in the moment as a basketball play. But it's one of those things where when you are an All-American, that's your shot. And I do wonder whether that's something that Mike Woodson is going to have to drill into him here as we go forward.
Yeah, not having that, just the killer instinct, as I called it earlier, that I'm the guy. Give me the ball. I want to take the shot. That's the attitude that you need him to have in that situation, especially because he had been the guy all night. He had taken the shots all night, and they couldn't stop him or they fouled him. And that's exactly what Mike Woodson wanted. He wanted him to go to the basket, score, draw the foul. But that didn't happen, as you said. And it's not about confidence or having confidence in players. I think that these guys have to be smarter. They have to know what's best, what's a higher percentage here. Sorry, but X hitting that shot is not a high percentage shot. Trace Jackson Davis, 2 feet from the basket, is a very high percentage shot. And so they've got to use their smarts a little bit more in these situations as well. And I think that that's not playing in. They're just trusting someone else is an excuse to me of not doing what you should have done.
Yeah. And I mean,
Alec?
I never want to obviously Mike Woodson coming from the NBA and having the experience and the pedigree that he has, it's difficult, right? Because he's the one coaching. We're sitting back here and talking about it. But I think you have to really look at some of the play calling late in games and really put a lot of that on Mike Woodson, because if you're not able to get Trace Jackson Davis the ball or an open look for one of your better shooters, that has to solely fall on Mike Woodson. There were a lot of really bad play calls, or at least execution of play calls down the stretch. And it's happened in more than one game this season after timeouts where Indiana just coughs up the ball almost immediately on that possession out of a timeout. And the fact that it seems to be that this offense goes away from any sort of ball screen action late in games when that is your best source of offense, and Xavier Johnson going downhill 15 feet and in, and a Trace Jackson Davis or a Race Thompson rolling to the rim, which is going to get you a foul or a bucket or an offensive rebound every single time. And they never seem to do that late in games. They run the 4-round one. They let Trace Jackson Davis get doubled. He kicks it out just like they've done in almost every single one of these second halves. And that's the offense that seems to go obviously stale because these guys can't hit shots consistently throughout a game, even if they start hot in the first half. And I really don't understand why this offense can't seem to do what it can for the last minute and a half, 2 minutes, 3 minutes of a game. And they seem to go away with any sort of scheme that they came into the game with and seem okay with just standing and watching and letting Trace Jackson Davis try to score or get doubled and kick it out for an open shot from a guy who has not consistently shown that he's going to be able to hit that late in games. And I think there needs to, we're at the point, right, where you need to try to do anything you can to fix whatever's going on right now with the 4-game losing streak. But there needs to be some sort of change to this offense late in games because it obviously hasn't been working. And it's just way too easy to defend from an opponent's standpoint, where I'd almost feel comfortable playing a box and one around Trace Jackson Davis for the last 3 minutes of a game and let either Xavier Johnson, Parker Stewart, Miller Kopp, who's obviously not going to be in there late in the games, which we've seen, but Trey Galloway, any of these guys who really aren't able to score consistently, take a shot and win the game, right? And it's something where you can even go 3-2 zone, 2-3 zone, any sort of defense, and you have so many different options that you can throw at this offense because there are not scoring threats around Trace Jackson Davis, and it seems like this is just I don't understand how this cannot be fixed at this point in the season with some new players on the roster, with everyone on the team last year and the coaches coming in knowing what the issue was. This offense statistically is worse than any one of Archie Miller's offenses in his tenure. And that is mind-boggling when you look at getting Trace Jackson Davis to come back for an extra year, playing at the level that he's played, some of the performances that he's put together, and you just seem to waste some of this talent that is around the roster just due to the fact that you can't put together a simple offensive game plan for a full 40 minutes. And it's frustrating. It's annoying to watch because you do know that this team, top to bottom, is talented enough to be not only in the top half of the Big Ten, but they're talented enough to be in the NCAA tournament. And here we are with 5 games left, and we're talking about them missing the tournament once again. And it's frustrating to see this sort of stuff happen over and over and over again.
I was interested after the game. We heard that Mike Woodson kind of admitted that the play call where Parker Stewart had the shot at the end, the last shot they had to tie the game, where he didn't get a good shot and he missed everything. Mike Woodson said that was a poor play call on his part. And I thought that was interesting because that's one of the things that I've felt has been a strength of Indiana's this year, has been getting good shots out of timeouts when they have a chance to set the offense and running good plays out of bounds plays. And there was just nothing there. They clearly tried it, as Trace said, they tried to run Parker Stewart through an elevator screen. Wisconsin just switched it and blew up the play. And then after that, Parker Stewart didn't know what to do. And at that point, you have to kind of figure out, okay, how do we have someone who knows what to do when the play goes bad? And I think X has actually been pretty good at that this year. X has been the guy that when the play goes bad, he gets the ball in his hands and he goes to the rim. And I think that's been a huge strength of his this year. But that night, he happened to be 3 for 16 from the field. And it was just tough because there are games where X his jump shot is just not there. And it was just a bad night for that to happen. And that's frustrating as well.
Yeah, and the biggest thing with Xavier Johnson is he's not disciplined enough to take what the defense is really giving him, but know what his strength is, right? I mean, he's 7 of 32 in the 2 games against Wisconsin, and they played the exact same defense both times, right? They sag off of him, they go underneath screens, they basically give him a wide open shot from the perimeter, and he's going to take it every single time. And though when you're 7 to 32, right? Obviously we remember the second half against Wisconsin where he missed those last 10 shots to end the game, right? And he's 1 for 8 in the second half. In this one too, it's the same stuff where you need to know the strength of your game, and you need to know that it's not taking a 3, whether or not it's wide open or not, when you're just dribbling it around and you don't have the confidence and in the thought process of, hey, right when I get this ball, I'm going up no matter what. He always kind of seems to second guess himself when he takes these shots. And it's just due to the fact that he's not disciplined enough to know what the strength of his game is and know that he's quick enough and strong enough to get by those Wisconsin defenders, because he's probably going to draw a foul even if he doesn't get by him, the way the Big Ten refs call these games late in games. And so you need to know what the strength of your game is. You need to know that it's not taking 15 to 20 foot jumpers, even if the defense is giving it to you.
Yeah, Indiana's relied on their defense all season, but the offense has just been a hodgepodge of Trace Jackson, Race and Race being successful, or someone getting hot on a particular day, but that's been it. And like you said, the changes have not been there, and it's not that it's too late, but it's really late to have to do that. You shouldn't have to do that. But when you mentioned a minute ago that Parker did look like he didn't know what to do, and then someone commented earlier, it's like these guys have not been on winning programs. They don't know what it is to win. And it's like they haven't been in that situation before, which is hard to believe if you think all the way back through high school. These guys have been, but it looks like at times it's taking a foreign language class to them. And I'm like, why does it look so difficult? That's the question that keeps coming. Why is it this hard? It should not be this hard, but it is time and year after year. It's like, damn it. Why are we looking at the same story?
It's funny because I wrote after they beat Maryland at Maryland when they won by 13. It seemed easy that day. I wrote that day. It just felt like this team. It was like during the Archie Miller era, kind of the defining part of the Archie Miller era for me was that every game, even if they won, it just felt like pulling teeth. And everything seemed so difficult. And that game against Maryland was the last in a stretch of games where it just felt a little bit easier. Like they went out there and won, and there wasn't too much drama about it. They just won a game. And obviously, since then, it's all gone bad. But I thought this team was different in that way. And I was wrong about that. And it's disappointing that we've kind of gone back to every single game feeling like an absolute slog. And I know that's the Big Ten. I know that's kind of just how Big Ten basketball works. But there are games where you just feel like, well, they just won this game. They won by 13, and it wasn't that difficult. That hasn't happened since then.
You even look at the Penn State game before that too. Yeah, that 2-game stretch. I think everyone was really expecting them to kind of turn the corner. Even the first half against Illinois, right? They still showed some of those similar signs, and then obviously the second half is where things kind of unraveled.
We're late for a break, I noticed, so we'll hit that up and we come back. Indiana's last in the Big Ten in free throw percentage, by the way. That's just another subject that just I cannot wrap my hands around. We got plenty more to talk about. Alec Lasley's with us from thehoosier.com. Dylan Sinn from Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our good friends at Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer. If you want the deals, you know where to get them at Andy Moore. Get more to your door with AndyMooreHonda.com. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
Brings friends together, and Leroy's Tavern is the place to watch all the games every week with the NFL.
All right.
It's funny you mentioned the free throws, Jim. I was looking it up the other day. Indiana has not ranked in the top 275 in college basketball in free throw percentage since Tom Crean. It's 5 straight years they've ranked in the bottom 75 in college basketball. And it's funny because the fan base, you see the fan base on Twitter, and not obviously not the whole fan base isn't on Twitter, but you see a sampling of it on Twitter, and everyone's yelling at IU, practice your free throws, damn it. And it makes them sound like kind of old fuddy-duddies and whatnot, but they're exactly right. It's completely inconceivable that they haven't been able to figure this out after 5 years.
Well, there's no way that they're not shooting free throws. This is
right.
mental.
Oh,
it's
100%,
mental.
100% it is, yes.
They have not recruited. I'm sorry. They have not recruited strong-minded, winning mentality kids. They're soft. There, I said it. Soft. S-O-F-T. Soft. They're soft. That's from the movie Life. By the way. But they are. How much time we have left, Will?
We got 1:39 left in the ad. Right.
I have time to make coffee done.
1:39. That's how long it took Wisconsin to score 8 straight points at the end of that game.
Yeah, when you look at the free throw shooting, I mean, a large portion of that goes back to obviously the guy getting to the line the most. That's Trace Jackson Davis, who's had his inconsistencies. But even the guards of Indiana over the last 5 years have really struggled. Like Romeo wasn't a terrific free throw shooter. Rob Finney has been horrendous for his career. Xavier Johnson has had his ups and downs. Parker Stewart never gets to the line. When he does, he went 1 for 6 the other day.
When he missed those 2 technical free throws against Michigan State, I was just like, what are we doing here?
Yep.
This guy's like a 45% 3-point shooter. We're sending him to the line. He's missing both. And I was just like, oh my God.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I will say that's the one thing about Tom Crean that he was able to do is he knew how to put together a really good team and recruit a really good team. The downfall was, just his in-game coaching was not obviously the best, and some of his schemes.
We're eligible for $0 down and 0.9% financing over 48 months. And you can always get more to your door with AndyMooreHonda.com. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer.
Come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Friday. Jim Coyle with you as always, joined by Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette and Alec Lasley from thehoosier.com. In the break, Alec, you were talking about Tom Crean's ability to put together a better team where he was able to put together shooters. He always had shooters, and Dylan, I think it was you that mentioned the free throw problems go back to that time. And I think you add to that, I think that Archie Miller did not instill toughness. He did not instill mental toughness. These guys have no idea how to win. It seems to me it's utterly mind-boggling, but you watch other teams and you watch them scrap to the very bitter end in a way that you can see they're doing it as a team. I don't see that from Indiana, but it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this, right? All the talk about this team not knowing how to win, late in games. I think at a certain point, that's a little bit of a mute point and a bit of a just kind of overreaction to some things. They know how to lose, and if you know how to lose, right, it should be super easy to just fix those 1 or 2 things that keep rearing its head. So I think the bigger issue is just this team's inability to kind of adjust on the fly. And we've seen that over and over the last few seasons. I don't think it's necessarily the team doesn't know how to win. I think they really struggle with adjusting. And part of that may be, learning how to win, but they've done this over and over and over again. It should not be a new situation to them when a team goes on an 8-0 run, a 10-0 run late in games, and they struggle to score the ball. They've been in those situations almost every single loss, and they haven't been able to adjust to that. They should know, hey, this is going to happen. We know this is going to happen. It's happened to us every single game, every single loss. This is how we adjust to it. So I think it's more so them struggling to adjust to in-game situations than it is them not learning how to win, right? Because, I mean, you're not going to learn how to win until you win, but a lot of that stuff has to go back to just learning how not to lose. And this team has not learned how not to lose yet. And that's, I think, the bigger issue when you look at some of these lack of adjustments that the team's been able or not been able to make this season. And obviously for the majority of the last 4, 5, 6 years.
Dylan?
Yeah, I think that part of it, I mean, it's interesting to me that you bring in because you talked about Archie Miller not instilling toughness, but the thing is that the roster has turned over already to a certain extent from where Archie Miller was. Obviously, a significant portion of the players are still his, but you have a bunch of new guys in the program this year, and they've contributed. Like there have been significant contributions from guys who were not in the program last year, including Parker Stewart, who was in the program but wasn't playing. But none of those guys have ever played an NCAA tournament either. So IU brought in Xavier Johnson, they brought in Michael Durr, they brought in Parker Stewart was again last year. But none of the guys they brought in had ever played an NCAA tournament either. And I wonder if that contributes to it, where it's more
and Miller
like
Kopp comes in from a program that is
Miller
absolutely not winning program.
Yeah, exactly. So I do wonder whether it's there's something to that, where it's these guys are good players, but in the same way that IU has never kind of figured out how to do this in terms of, as Alex said, finding ways not to lose. It's been the same with some of the other players they brought into the program, and that has just kind of fed on itself.
Well, the good news is that's about to change, and that leads us into our next topic. I hate saying help's on the way, but that's how it appears, because when we look, we've all seen people like Jalen Hood-Schifino play, but it's more to it than just watching him play or his stats. I mean, when I saw him, I could see that he had great court vision. He's always looking. He was always moving without the ball. He was doing things. He comes from a winning program that instills toughness and winning. They play against a brutal schedule. So he's basically at a prep school getting ready for this already. Those type of and those situations. And he's a point guard, which is great. You got guys like CJ Gunn, who we've seen him really step up his offense and be a scorer and hit shots and do things that you need to do. And even though that they may not have won this game or that game, they're coming back and they're fighting. And he has the understanding of fighting to win aspect. And the other talent that's coming in, it's good talent. And I think that's going to be a huge difference. And it's just, there's going to have to be some coaching changes, but you would think that with Dane Fife and Thad Matta on staff, that wouldn't be such an issue. But there's that part of it too that you mentioned. So there's several things there, but help is coming. And the 3-year-old kid that was here the other night obviously was uberly impressed with his visit to Indiana.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's still in the 2022 class. Right, a lot of people are probably going to ask where are these scholarships going to come from, considering they're 3 over as we sit here today. That's not going to be an issue. I don't think in this age of college basketball, you're going to have an issue with oversigning. But he's a late blooming guy, grew about 5-6 inches over the last year, grown about 7 inches since his sophomore season. So he's always played that point guard role. He's about 6'6" now. Still likes to play with the ball in his hands, but very athletic guy, career 36% 3-point shooter. Seen that number dip a little bit this year, but he's a guy that a lot of high major programs are really reaching out to right now to try to kind of cement a little bit more of that back into their 2022 class. And I think Mike Woodson's realizing that you can't just rebuild your team through the transfer portal every single year. I mean, that's a lot to do, right? Bringing in 3-4 new guys every single season who haven't been there, especially if they're going to be there for just 1 or 2 years. You need some stability in the bottom.
To develop culture by doing that.
Yeah, and then you need to kind of learn how to build your program from the ground up. Right, your program's going to be only as good as your 13th and 14th best players are on your team. And you need to do that by bringing in talented freshmen, right? But guys who are going to be there for all 4 years. And you're starting to see that with how he's recruiting. You're getting the top 50, the top 20 guys, but you're also getting the still top 150 guys who are going to be there for a few seasons, but are still extremely talented and tough. And I think that's the biggest thing that he has really found out over this season is, yeah, you can have talented guys, but at the end of the day, college basketball is going to be won by really good guard play, but really tough guard play and really competitive guards. And that's something that Indiana really hasn't had. But with their next 2 classes already, with Hood-Schifino coming in, CJ Gunn has shown this year. I think a lot of people are really impressed with how he stepped up his game, but more so his competitive nature and his drive and motor, especially with some of the second half performances that he's put together. But then you look at Ja'Kai Newton and Gabe Cupps in the 2023 class in the backcourt, and these are really tough physical guards who hate losing. And someone said in the comments over here on the right, they need to find guys who hate losing more than they like winning. And that's the biggest thing when you go back to learning just not how to lose, right? You need to have that drive where obviously you're going to do whatever it takes to win, but this team just needs to learn how to not lose. And you only get that with uber competitive, driven guys, and that starts in the backcourt.
Yeah, I'm looking. Go ahead, Dylan.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's gonna be interesting how this team looks next year, because we assume that it's almost certain that Trace is gone. Beyond that, everyone else has chances to come back. Like they either have eligibility remaining, or they have a chance to use the COVID year to come back. And like, we haven't really gotten a whole lot of clarity on is Race Thompson coming back? Is Xavier Johnson coming back? Like it's going to be interesting to see how that shapes up. Because there are guys that have decisions to make on whether they want to play another year at IU or move on. And I think the rest of the season here, how it goes, is going to go a long way to determining how that goes one way or the other.
Race Thompson is a unique case because he's not someone that everybody's thinking about him being drafted, but I can see him playing in the NBA.
Yeah,
he's got a shot. He can shoot. His jump shot looks nice. He's just got to work on it, and he can play, with the big boys. So I don't know. It's Alec. Is he someone that stays another year, or can he improve his draftability anymore? He's not on any draft boards. Because Trace Jackson Davis is getting a lot of the does he stay that extra year to get that attention for himself?
So, my question to you guys is, do you think Race can put together a season that Trace Jackson Davis has, when all the defense knows is, hey, this is the only front court player. We're gonna focus in on him, right? I mean, I think Race gets a lot of, to no fault of his own, but he gets a lot of different open looks because of Trace Jackson Davis next to him. That's not to say that Race Thompson isn't a phenomenal player, and I think one of the more underrated players in the entire country, but he's not the first, or sometimes even, obviously this year, yes, but towards the back half of last year, not even the second player on opposing team scouting reports. And there's a big difference between being the guy and being, the quote unquote sidekick to the guy. And I think no matter how good Race Thompson has been, I don't think he comes back, and I don't think his whatever kind of stock he would have, either internationally, G League, whatever, is going to get really any higher than it is right now. And he already redshirted a year too, so he's been in college a long time. He's taken a lot of hits in college, right? He's had the concussion issue, obviously not so much in the back half of his career, but that really hurt him in the first half of his career. So there's just a lot of different things that go into this outside of draft stock. At the end of the day, I don't think he comes back. I think Indiana loses 5 or 6 guys from this roster. And like Dylan said, right, everyone has the opportunity to come back. I think you're going to see this coaching staff now want their players in there, right? Mike Woodson, something that we don't talk about, he was playing behind the 8 ball the entire end of the 2021 recruiting class and even the 2022 recruiting class, right? He kind of walked into a terrific situation getting Tamar Bates because of a coaching change. That never would have happened if Shaka Smart didn't leave Texas. So he did a great job, obviously, getting one of his guys that he wanted, but none of these other guys on his roster right now, outside of obviously, really wanting Trace to come back and Race and some of these other guys and going out in the transfer portal, but he had to do that. He had to do that, or else he wouldn't have been able to field a roster. And he was way more desperate because there weren't guys that were just going to walk in and be able to compete at a high level. So I think he did a tremendous job doing what he did and getting these guys back. A lot of people are looking right at Armand Franklin and Al Durham, and especially Al Durham, the season he's having. But both those guys are shooting career lows in percentages here this season. And so I don't think Al Durham's having a terrific year, but a lot of that is also due to volume. is due to volume. And so I think when you take a step back and look at what Mike Woodson was able to do, kind of scrambling last minute, trying to get a coaching staff together, trying to put all this stuff together in March and April, he's done a phenomenal job. And I think you're going to see him, push out some players after this year, now that he's been able to kind of get a grasp on exactly what he wants out of his team, but what he wants out of his program. And I think that Northwestern game was a huge turning point for him, at least outwardly and vocally to the public. about, hey, you know, this is my program now. This is not, the players are not going to run this program, which is what I feel like a lot of people thought over Archie Miller's tenure. Is the players really ran that program, and Mike Woodson kind of put his foot down and said, you know, I don't care if you're the best player, the 13th best player on this team. If you don't do what this program is about and what should be about, then you're not going to play. You're not going to be a part of it. And I have no issues, you know, is saying goodbye to you at the end of the season.
I agree that I expect to see some probably up to 5 guys gone. But the biggest question there is they're going to have a gigantic hole in the front court. And that's not going to be filled by Michael Durr and Logan Duncombe. That can only probably be filled from the transfer portal. But they'll have as you just pointed out, they were behind. They're going to be much further ahead this time. And that's going to be that should be a very attractive spot for a much more talented player in that position.
Yeah, and I mean, what team in the country has a better pitch to a front court member in the transfer portal than, hey, look at all the touches Race Thompson and Trace Jackson Davis got. Look at how many times we fed them the ball. Look at their numbers. Look at how Race Thompson developed. So I think they have the best pitch for any sort of front court player, because they lose so much production out of those 2 guys, and they need someone to come in there and play at an extremely high level. So that's a very appealing pitch for any guy in the transfer portal. But I think, you know, the way that Mike Woodson's recruited, now I think a lot of people are really starting to come around to his recruiting habits and going very guard heavy, especially after we've seen the play over the last few months with these guards, and knowing that you need good guards to win in college basketball. And there's literally no way around that.
What do you have up at the Hoosier.com, Alec?
Yeah, obviously we have a couple of recruiting tidbits from Thero's visit on earlier this week. We'll have a little bit more on him later today, but obviously the big stuff is kind of turning the attention to this last kind of stretch for Indiana, and having them figure out some way to limp through to the NCAA tournament, because obviously we know once teams get in there, you know, anything can really happen, but they need to win some games first.
Absolutely, brother. Thanks a lot. Appreciate you.
Appreciate it, guys. Have a good one.
You bet. Alec Lasley joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Myself and Dylan Sinn will be right back with more from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, brought to you by Andy Moore Honda Bloomington. Get more to your door with Andy Moore Honda, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer. We're back with more right after this. Start the new year out in style with the new Honda from Andy Moore Honda Bloomington. Let's see. Well, hello, Zach Osterman. He's muted.
Hey.
Hello, Zach Osterman. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
You look as though you're trying to find a fly in the room.
No. I've got my computer on my my TV monitor in the office. So
he's big timing us, Dylan.
Are you still watching the planes, Zach?
No, I think they've. It seems like they've stopped it all. Because there's a storm in London. There's a really bad windstorm in London, and that's what's kind of made it all, I think, so interesting or compelling or whatever. But I think they've stopped.
What was you watching, a radar screen with the planes on it?
No, it's this thing called Big Jet TV. It's this guy who just goes out to one of the main runways at Heathrow and like basically commentates on planes coming down. But all the planes are like really struggling because it's so windy. Like there was a Qatar Airlines plane that had to circle and go again, like it couldn't get down, and yeah. So
I have to look that up. There it is, Heathrow. Is this a YouTube thing?
Yeah, it's called Big Jet TV. Again, I'm pretty sure that that everything's kind of quiet
around. I used
Quiet.
to watch one with a guy that would broadcast his trucking videos. You know, him driving across the country, just to video him driving on the interstate all across the country. He would live stream his truck drives.
As long as he wasn't shooting people, I guess that's okay. YouTube, there we go. Search Big Jet TV.
It's entertaining to watch as something that's like background stuff to watch. You just have on in the background.
Oh, there he's live right now. All right, where's the volume? I got to turn that down.
I think they've, like I said, I think they've stopped air traffic coming in and out. I could be wrong.
It's that bad.
I mean, the planes were struggling.
Holy moly!
I'll get it up here. Yeah.
Oh, there's one. There's one coming in. Unless I'm late.
Might be going out. I'm not sure. He's got 145,000 streamers right now.
Oh man, I'm in the wrong business.
I think
in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl Sizemore from Remax Advanced Realty at Cheryl@IndyHomePros.com or 317-298-0961. Cheryl Sizemore from Remax Advanced Realty. Let Cheryl Sizemore get you in the home you want today. Cheryl@IndyHomePros.com.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Friday. Coming to you, Jim Coyle with you as always, Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette, and we are joined by the Indiana IU insider from the Indy Star, Zach Osterman, which has introduced me to probably will be my new worst habit of watching Big Jet TV on YouTube, which I haven't pulled up right now. Don't go watch it now. You all can wait till later. But yeah, I'm gonna enjoy that. It's trying to catch back up right now, but looking forward to that. How did you get into that? How did you find that?
I just found it on Twitter like everybody else.
I mean, sometimes you just stumble upon one of those things that is like, oh wow, I wish I'd have thought of that. He has a ton of people following him, which is hilarious. But yeah, I can't wait to get into that. How's everything else going with you, Zach?
Good. Unexpected weekend off here. Yeah, just an unexpectedly quiet weekend at the end of or in the middle of February. Not something we usually get.
No, it's not, and it's not something the teams usually get. Indiana, I wonder, is this helpful, hurtful? Is this a team that needs to keep playing games or needs some time off to learn from what they're still not doing to close games out? So I don't know if this is helping them or hurting them with this little break.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. It's, I think, the question we always ask. I mean, it looked like that the built-in bye week that Indiana already had on its schedule looked like it set up really well. They'd won 4 of 5, they'd won 6 of 8. They had that really strong week where they pounded Penn State at home and then went on the road and beat Maryland pretty comfortably. And I think we all thought, I certainly thought, this bye week comes at a good time. They're riding some real momentum now. They can just take a week to work on themselves and all that, and then they come out and they've lost 4 games in a row since then. So, I mean, I certainly think that at very least there is value when a team is struggling like this in maybe being able to take them out of the day-to-day rhythm, because it can start to feel like, I think, mentally, like you're not fixing anything when it's practice game or practice recovery game, and you can't, you're locked in that cycle and you go through it 2, 3, 4 times, and maybe it's a little bit harder to say. It's a little bit harder for players to see, like, well, we're getting better, even though we haven't broken our pattern, we've been doing the same things and getting the same results. It can be kind of hard maybe for players to see the positives long term in that. I think that Indiana can have a good bye week here and still lose at Ohio State. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think they can still lose, let's say emphatically at Ohio. I mean, Ohio State's really good. Ohio State, you look at efficiency margin, they're one of the best teams in the Big Ten. They're surging at the right time. They've won 3 of 4. They've only lost twice since January 13th. and that was Purdue and Rutgers away. I mean, that they have been really tough at home. In fact, I don't think they've lost at home this year. They haven't. And quietly, as much as we're talking about the Purdue's and the Illinois and the Wisconsins. I mean, Ohio State's got games to make up, and so that
I was just going to say, they're tied
I mean,
really for the lead, basically.
Yeah,
with
I mean, they're 2 games, they're 3 games behind Purdue, but that's all, or they're a game and a half, I guess, if you want to see it that way, behind Purdue. But that's all wins. They've got the same number of conference losses as everybody else in the Big Ten title race. They just haven't played as many games. Now, if you're Indiana, maybe what you're hopeful of is you're catching them in this stretch where they're going to have to play Tuesday, Saturday, Monday, Thursday. That's a lot of games in a short space of time. And you're going to get them after Iowa on Saturday on a really short turnaround. And right before they have to go to Illinois too. So, if you're Indiana, you're just maybe trying to find every little advantage you can, but one way or another. My point is more Indiana, I think, can get right from this little 6-day break, this unexpected 6-day break, and still lose at Ohio State. But if Indiana turns around and let's say, for example, wins at Maryland or wins at home against Maryland and then goes on the road and beats a Minnesota team that is obviously really struggling now. I think Minnesota felt a little bit like a surprise to people when they were 10-1 at Christmas time. They've only won 2 games since the turn of the year. And I mean, you look at some of their losses, they got pounded at Penn State. They lost to Nebraska. I think they should be Nebraska's only Big Ten win, I think, at this point. You find a way if you're Indiana to basically use this week to get right and go win those games. It's okay if you go to Ohio State and lose by 12, 14 points because Ohio State's just good enough. And, maybe at some level, if you're Mike Woodson, you're not telling your team we can lose at Ohio State. It's fine. But you're trying to find a way this week when you can break them from that rhythm and that cycle that can become sort of monotonous and feel repetitive when you're not winning. Find a way to get them in a mind frame that says it's not just about Ohio State. Maybe it's more broadly about 3-2 down the stretch. 3-2 down the stretch breaks breaks the losing streak, guarantees Indiana finishes 10-10 in the conference. I think at that point, personally, would probably put them in the NCAA tournament. And then you get to just put a lot of this in the past and say, we had a rough patch there, but we're still in the dance. We're still going into Indy in control of our own destiny. Let's just leave that because I mean, Mike Woodson used that phrase that really kind of really dug into my brain post-game Tuesday. He said guys are looking over their shoulder on things that have happened in the past. I think that there is, this is for this team specifically, this is Mike Woodson's big hurdle. And he might have hoped not to have to confront it this year, but this big hurdle of how do they put the frustration, the disappointment, the moments when it's gone wrong for them in the past, last season, to some extent 2 seasons ago, even for the guys that were around for it 3 years ago, where they had that incredibly sort of that wild mood swing season. They lost 7 in a row. They beat Michigan State on the road. Then they lost 6 in a row. Then they won 4 in a row to close out the regular season and were basically playing for a spot in the tournament and lost to Ohio State. Not ugly. It was close, but they were down like 24-25 at one point in the Big Ten tournament. From a mentality perspective, this is what Mike Woodson's got to get fixed in his program is just almost being able to get out of your own head and not be looking over your shoulder, not sort of feeling like the shadows of past failures are chasing you. I think that there's almost a world where in Woodson's mind, you're preparing your team for this as like a block of games and saying, we finished 3-2 down the stretch. And if we lose at Minnesota, but we beat Ohio State, that's fine. That's probably preferable. If you say you can win 3 of the last 5, Woodson will probably say, yeah, I'll forget Rutgers and Minnesota. I'd rather beat Ohio State and Purdue. That'll do us more good. But one way or the other, it's about just using this week to sort of break that rhythm and maybe try and get some guys in just a better headspace, because I think it's clear Woodson feels like this team, it's not all physical right now for Indiana.
And they're not that far off, Dylan. If you look at the standings, Purdue's at the top. Indiana beat Purdue. Wisconsin's right there. They could have beat them twice, realistically. You got Illinois up there, which is tough. Ohio State, they beat. So they're playing competitive with the teams at the top of this league with their problems. So that it shows that it's not that they're not far off, but the problems that are there have to be fixed. And as Zach mentioned, but they're close, but it may be until there's different personnel. I don't know what it will take of this cycle to get them out of that. But just like the free throw shooting, still last in the Big Ten. It's all mental stuff. So I don't know how long they're going to cycle out of this. If for a season they can cycle out of it, but I agree with everything Zach said.
No, I mean, I think that's right. I think it's interesting that we talked about Ohio State having all these games in a row here. I think that does set up fairly well for Indiana. We just saw Maryland go on the road and come extremely close to beating Purdue because Purdue was coming off the same stretch, a similar stretch of games. So I think that helps. But I think you're right. I think 3-2 down the stretch probably gets them in. It would be nice to get one of those games against Ohio State or Purdue. But it doesn't. I don't think it's necessary per se. So it just depends on. Yeah, I guess you're right, Zach. Is going about this week and figuring out how do we get this done at the end of the season. What is your sense of, if there is a sense of, how do you go about fixing that mentally? Is there a quick fix that you can do in a week here?
I mean, I don't think it's a quick fix in the sense that what I mean is I don't think there's a button. Well, let me rephrase. I'm kind of drawing from my own very, very limited experience coaching Little Five. There are buttons you can press. The problem is if you press the wrong one, it does nothing or potentially makes things worse. But there are things you can do, and you can, because the day-to-day, like I think about our world when Little Five season, if you want to call it that, from like late February through the race, it does become monotonous. You're at the track all the time. You're doing a lot of the same workouts. We're watching film of old races. We're having the same discussions about tactics and strategy and whatever else. And, sometimes it can be a small thing, like, just saying, everybody come over to the house. I'll put burgers on the grill. And like, we won't talk about the race. We're not watching film. We're not, but just like everybody come let some stress out, essentially. And I think that's, obviously you can't like take them to the lake or anything like that because it's the middle of winter, but it is almost, you're looking for something a little bit unorthodox or something a little bit outside. Because again, I think what can happen, and I think this can happen to anybody, but certainly college age athletes that haven't been doing it as long. And a lot of these guys probably in their high school careers were used to having success, weren't facing a lot of losing streaks and things because they were playing on good teams and they were, key pieces for those teams. I think that there's an element of when you do get stuck in that, game recovery, like I was saying earlier, game recovery, practice, game recovery, and then it's the same routine over and over again. And then all of a sudden, a team that has, and I know that there's some new guys on this team, there's 6 new faces from a season ago, but it is worth saying no scholarship player on this team has NCAA tournament experience. So there's not a guy out there that's been through this yet anyway, and seen that cycle broken and then gotten the tangible physical reward. Because of course we can say, well, Trace Jackson Davis and Race Thompson and Rob Finney would have gone to the tournament in 2020, but they didn't. And yes, they earned that opportunity, but they didn't get the physical reward of hearing their name called on Selection Sunday, going to the tournament, getting all the stuff that comes with that, the fanfare, the swag, Adidas giving you a new uniform or new shoes or whatever it is. feeling like it's special and different, and having that sort of that learned experience of this is what it feels like, and this is how this is how point A becomes point B becomes point C. You can get into that rhythm, and all of a sudden, especially for a group that has had some of these dips before that have proven kind of disastrous, you can suddenly start to feel like, well, geez, it's just the same stuff every day and it's not working, and we're trying different, layers to game plans and things, but ultimately it's not working. I think that what you can have in an extended break like this is an opportunity to disrupt that rhythm. And maybe it's just as simple as changing your practice routines up a little bit, but you disrupt that rhythm. You get guys out of feeling that way, feeling like they're just sort of locked in this endless cycle. And maybe you can just kind of shake enough loose to, again, lose at Ohio State, but then win the next two, and you're 18-10 going into your last two games. And I do genuinely believe 10-10 in the conference would get Indiana in.
Do they need to win one in the Big Ten tournament, Zach? We kind of back to that situation.
I think that what you might be in a situation with the Big Ten tournament, as much as, and it would depend on matchups and things, you could be in a situation where it would be more like you can't lose your game in a little bit like the Nebraska game in 2020, where depending on where Indiana lands, you might wind up in a situation where like you're playing one of the teams coming out of the Wednesday or something like that, or you're playing the 10th seed. And it's more an element of you need to find a way not to lose this game. If it's let's say Indiana finished 10-10, they'd probably be like the 8, and they might be playing Penn State or Northwestern in the 9 as the 9, or maybe Indiana's the 9. Or I'm just trying to do this while we're talking, but it could wind up being a situation, I think anyway, where it's as much maybe try not to lose that game. Now, if you're the 9 and you're playing like Iowa as the 8, then that's more of an opportunity. And then maybe we are having that discussion. But I think that they would get in at, what would that be? They'd be 19. If they were 10 and 10 in the conference, they'd be 19-11. And so they'd be 19-12 at worst on Selection Sunday. I think that would get them in. Obviously not impressively, but there does feel like there's an element, a little bit like thinking about this week and just breaking up the monotony and finding something to refresh. I think there would be something refreshing for this group about just getting in and just putting that demon to rest and just saying nobody's going to be talking about X number of years out of the tournament. Nobody's going to be talking about another February collapse next year. Nobody's going to be bringing up to us, geez, what's it going to take to get over the hump? No, we got over that hump, and now we just move on from there. You don't want to be in this position, obviously, if you're Indiana, but you are here now. And I think the best you can do, especially, again, with this, with this break the way it is. And then it is also worth saying Indiana's going to play 5 games in, 13 days, because they're going to start on a Monday against Ohio State, and they're going to end on a Saturday against Purdue. So after this break, you don't really have time to fix it. Like after this break, it is very much, you're going to play on Monday, 2 days off, Thursday, 2 days off, Sunday, 3 days off, Saturday, or Sunday, 3 days off, Wednesday, 2 days off, Saturday. You aren't going to have time to go back in and fix it again. This is it. This is your, I'm kind of thinking now about writing something this afternoon. On all of this. You've kind of jogged my brain, but this is it now. This is your chance. It wasn't supposed to unfold this way. It did. You've got to seize it here, I think, if you're Indiana.
Well, and I follow that up with how important is it that they make the tournament this year, just to make the tournament, to get in there after these 5 years of void.
I mean, I don't think you want to say that like the program's not going to fold if they don't make the tournament.
Oh no,
like,
no,
they shouldn't get fired if they don't make the tournament, all that kind of stuff. But it would feel like it reinforced some things about the current state of the program if you collapse this way. And I mean, let's be fair, it would be a collapse. I mean, Indiana was comfortably in the tournament after they beat Maryland. They were one win away from being ranked. I mean, they were, I never thought they were part of the Big Ten tournament or Big Ten title picture by any means, but like they were on course to just be one of those teams that, like, even if they'd only won 2 of these last 4, we wouldn't be having these conversations. They would be in easy. They would be all but locked in at this point if they just found a way to like beat Wisconsin and Northwestern. That's how comfortably they were in. If you didn't make it at this point, you would start to feel like, not like does this program need a hard reset because it got one last year with the coaching change, but you would start to feel like, maybe there's almost just sort of a snake bitten element to some of the elements of this program that it's going to take whereas, it sort of felt in January like recruiting's going well, Woodson's clearly connecting with his players. Now they're winning on the floor. This is all pointed in a really positive direction. It would be a substantial setback. And I think the first one, but also certainly the most meaningful one, first big one, but a much more meaningful one than kind of any other for Mike Woodson. And it would maybe reinforce this idea that I'm not trying to call anybody mentally weak, but that like you just kind of you'd have to find a way to almost sort of remove the mentality that got you here off your roster 2 years in a row, 3 years out of 4. And that's difficult. I mean, those intangibles, you can spend, all year trying to build them. And then when you need them, they're just not there. That is what is so difficult about the job of coaching. And, we've heard Mike Woodson talk about feeling like he doesn't have great leadership right now. That's obviously not a great thing to hear. I do go back a lot to kind of what he talked about after the Wisconsin game, which to me sounded like talking about fear, a team that has just a fear of failure at this point because it has experienced so much of it. And that fear has been so pointed and so acute when you think about, that failure, when you think about, the way the 2019 season ended, the way the 2021 season ended, I guess even to some extent, having that opportunity taken away by COVID. Not that they were the only program that had that. Plenty did, obviously. I mean, Butler, talk to Laval Jordan about what he lost by not getting to go to the tournament in 2020. But, for Indiana, even just having that taken away, you would start to sort of question, like, how capable are some guys on this roster going to be of coming back from that mentally, or does Indiana need to start thinking about a world where, like, next year it's you got to hand the reins over to a major extent to somebody who's not been connected to all of that? I don't know, but I do think not making the tournament would be very damaging for this, just for where this program is and the trajectory Mike Woodson seemed to have it on. For the first 3 months of this season, after everything he'd done in the offseason, all the good recruiting work, all that, to get that, to have that kind of flipped on its head, I think would add a lot of work to the Mike Woodson project, if you want to use that word, that it did not seem like Indiana was going to have to do.
It's a good name for it. I'd ask you what you have coming up, but it's either nothing or something you feel like writing this afternoon. It sounds like. If you do, give us a mention. Just kidding. But I can't thank you enough. Yeah, it's weird having the weekend off, but to enjoy it with the new little one. I'm sure that's keeping you busy.
Oh yeah, no, it'll be. We'll fill the hours. Don't worry about that.
Well, Zach, I can't thank you enough, brother. I appreciate you. Make sure you give him a follow and be a subscriber to the Indy Star. I am. Keep local papers alive, baby. Thank you, Zach. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks for having me as always.
I was back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our friends at Aurora Specialty Sleep Clinic. If you have problems sleeping or snoring, they can take care of you. Dr. Steve Green, Bob Knight's first recruit, as a matter of fact, business partners with Brian Evans, came up with this unique little device that is carried in a very small thing like this. You don't have to drag around, the CPAP and all that stuff, reach out to them, or specialtysleep.com. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
Whether it's a celebration or just a relaxing night away from the kitchen, don't make the same old choices. Trust.
Well, now it's your turn. I'm going to pull your string. What do you, speaking of, do you have anything that's coming out at the moment?
I don't really have a whole lot right now in terms of what is out. I will be, obviously, tomorrow we have high school basketball, girls semi-state. I'll be in LaPorte for that. And then Sunday I'll be at Purdue for Purdue-Rutgers, which is now suddenly a really important, should be terrific game. So I have that. And then yeah, just kind of wrapping things up on this season over the next couple of weeks here.
Well, and the big Michigan goes to Iowa last night and gets that win.
Yeah,
which
that put them
gigantic for Michigan.
They went from first four out in Lenardi's bracket to last four in because of that victory.
Indy 500. The Indy 500 is coming up.
The Daytona 500.
Daytona 500. I meant to say Daytona. I don't know why I said Indy.
Yep. Oh, and
in the comments, someone said it.
DeMarlo Belcher. I haven't talked about him yet. A Fort Wayne guy.
Yeah.
Any news on that?
We called the coroner's office. They were closed by the time we got to them yesterday. We had a Fort Wayne outlet report that basically the Fort Wayne outlet was one of the first ones to report it. The coroner's office confirmed it to them. Have not heard from IU football yet. We're waiting to hear from them. So
I know he was found in his vehicle, which usually is you can't assume anything, but
yeah,
one usually does.
The coroner said that they're in the middle of an investigation. It's going to take several weeks here, so we might not hear from them for a while. Again, that was not to us. That was to the TV station. They got back to them before they got back to us. So we're hoping to hear from them today.
I was going to go to the Evansville semi-state with following Forest Park, but I ended up having to stay home for a boys' game.
Because their section was it boys sectionals are next week, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Forest Park girls won their regional event.
Yeah.
It was at Crawford.
Indiana women's basketball got a big win last night against Northwestern.
And Quincy Holmes is back.
Yeah. And I mean, the Big Ten title race here for the women is crazy right now. Ohio State beat Maryland Maryland beat Ohio State last night. So that kind of even throws the title picture into bigger chaos.
Beautiful and high quality
jewelry at the top of it right now.
Ready to be put in a little green box from Brinker's Jewelers. Valentine's Day will be here before you know it, so don't wait until the last minute. Come into Brinker's Jewelers, voted the Tri-State's best jewelry store 9 years in a row, located at the corner of Green River Road and the Lloyd Expressway.
Welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you on this Friday from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Brought to you by our good friends at Remax Realty. If you're in the market for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore and her 2 decades of experience. It could be the difference between you getting that home and not. Reach out to her, Cheryl at IndyHomePros.com. Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette is with me. Jim Coyle here as always. Speaking of Fort Wayne, didn't talk about this yesterday. Some sad news in regards to Indiana football. DeMarlo Belcher passed away, found in his vehicle. Dylan has been working on that since he is in Fort Wayne, but nothing new, it sounds like, on cause of death and all of that. But it's regardless of the cause of death, it's just that's a sad situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I talked to his former high school coach up here at Northside High School in Fort Wayne, Casey Kolkman, and he gushed about about him as a person, DeMarlo Belcher, and he said the thing that stands out to him the most was his smile. He just had one of those smiles that could kind of light up a room. And yeah, he just talked about how it was great to have him on their team, regardless of how good of a player he was. And obviously, he was a very good player, but it went beyond that, as he was a very good teammate, never had a bad word to say about a teammate, and just kind of handled his business on the field. And then obviously was a fantastic football player. And so, yeah, it's a loss. It's tough in Fort Wayne because we've had two kind of transcendent football players here over the last few years or so that have died very young in DeMarlo and James Hardy.
I mean, both receivers at IU. I mean, big time receivers.
They were close. I was looking through our archives yesterday, kind of learning more about DeMarlo and what we had written about him in the past. I came across a story about going into his senior season at IU. He was 28 catches short of passing James Hardy's record for receptions at IU, and he and James Hardy worked out that entire offseason together in Bloomington, as Hardy was in the NFL and Belcher was going into his senior season at IU, and they worked out together. And he talked about how he had been talking some light trash to James Hardy about how he was going to break his record and all of that. And of course, he came 2 receptions short of doing that. But it seemed like they were close, and there was a pipeline at that time from Fort Wayne to Indiana of some really talented receivers. It was James Hardy, it was DeMarlo Belcher, it was Dre Muhammad, and they were all close. And so, yeah, this is really sad when you stack this on top of James Hardy. It's sad in its own right, of course, but it's sad because of what it represents in terms of both of them being gone in their 30s.
Yep, it is a sad deal. I hope we'll keep you up on that. Five Lefts, appreciate the comment. It's awesome to listen to mature, credible conversations about the team rather than listening to some guys ranting and acting like the sky is falling. That's why I have people on here that are like Dylan, like Zach, like Alec, that know what they're doing. That this is we're professionals. And that there's a difference. I'm just telling you, there's a difference. You have to remove yourself as a fan. You have to take that out. You have to look at things from an unbiased perspective, and that's what we do. I mean, there's no other way to do it other than that. Then you're fooling yourself. If you do anything other than that, you're just simply lying to yourself. And then we would be, in essence, lying to you guys, which we don't do. But thank you. We appreciate you. But unfortunately, yes, sometimes saying the truth is just, it's not always fun, because truth is not what everyone wants to hear all the time, or sometimes they don't believe it. And then sometimes it's easier to lay it on, which I would never have been accused of that during the Archie Miller tenure. So I had something caught in my throat there. So this weekend, no game. What are you going to do? I will be watching the Daytona 500. There's no doubt about that. I enjoy watching motorsports. I've missed it. It's going to be very interesting because they've got the next gen car, which I know that they've had some issues with, because there were so many changes. They have gone to the Indy car style of wheels on it. It has one hub in the center instead of taking 5 lug nuts off, which, yeah, it's better, because you have all those lug nuts everywhere, and it was a stupid penalty if you didn't have one on. So there's one change, but the car itself, that they've moved the transmission to the back, and they've just done some different things, but it's going to be interesting to see how it goes, and especially in a big time race like the Daytona 500 that has a 2.5 mile track. They raced at the Coliseum. Did you see that?
I did, yeah.
I mean, that's crazy. The sheer fact that they spent 4 months putting a 1/4 mile track in the Coliseum was nuts. But they did, and it was kind of entertaining, because even though they weren't going fast, they were all bunched up right there. So, but I don't know how much we got a good view of that car yet. So, but certainly on Sunday, that will be no doubt we'll get all we want to from it.
Yeah. The clash in Los Angeles was. I didn't watch any of it myself, but I did see a lot of the coverage of it, and it seemed like it went very, very well for NASCAR. They kind of put a lot of their chips into this race, and it seemed like it went very well. They got a lot of publicity from it. They had a lot of fans at the Coliseum. There's some. Which is not something you generally see at that time of year for NASCAR, and so it was really good for them as they try to kind of figure out where they're going next as an organization here. And yeah, it was just kind of funny. You see the videos on Twitter, especially of the overhead shots where it looked like they're almost model cars kind of racing around a track at the Coliseum. Very, very funny to see and pretty entertaining.
Yeah, the halftime act was Ice Cube.
Yeah. Pitbull was out there, I think.
Pitbull. Yeah, I didn't see him, but I heard he was out there. They had a lot of grand marshals that were all involved in the Los Angeles area sports for the most part. Eric Dickerson was one. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was supposed to be one, but he was sick that day and wasn't able to come out. Manager of the Dodgers, one of the volleyball players. I'm trying to remember. Was Marcus Allen? Was he out there? I can't remember.
That sounds right. Yeah. But it kind of felt like a racing version of the Rose Bowl a little bit. Like they're like kind of just a lot of the pomp and circumstance that normally goes into a Rose Bowl, and you just have it instead of it all leading up to a football game, you have it leading up to a NASCAR race, which was interesting.
We got one more break we have to take. Indiana women's basketball was back in action last night at home. Mackenzie Holmes returned, which I knew she was close to coming back, but I didn't know she was going to play in that game. I happened to be watching it on television. I'm like, somebody said, well, she is back. I'm like, oh, yep, there she is. I wonder if this will help Indiana with her being out and having to win without her and now having her back. You wonder how that helps, doesn't help, how they've got to integrate that back in. But they're leading the Big Ten right now. But Maryland right on their heels. Maryland has won 8 straight in the conference.
Yep. And it's interesting. If you look at the Big Ten standings right now, it is about as bunched up at the top as you will ever see it. So you have Indiana's 11-2, Maryland is 12-3 in a virtual tie at the top. They play each other at the end of the season at Maryland here. So that could end up deciding the Big Ten title. But you also have Michigan is 11-3. They play Maryland on I believe it's Saturday. And then you have Ohio State at 11-4. And they have the easiest remaining schedule of games against Wisconsin, Penn State, Michigan State. So it could get really, really bunched up down the stretch of the season here. And even Iowa has a chance. They're 10-4, and they have 2 games against Indiana back-to-back and a game against Michigan at the end of the season. If they win out, they could end up being the champions. You have 5 teams in the race for the title with 3 games left, essentially. And it is about as exciting as a Big Ten title race is going to get. That's a lot of fun.
The women, did you say they play back-to-back against Iowa?
Because they had a game canceled earlier in the year, and so that it's being made up. But yes, the next 2 games are home against Iowa, then at Iowa.
Wow.
Yeah. So they have those 2, and then Maryland. So and then at Maryland, those are their last 3. So it's a difficult finishing stretch for Indiana here.
Well, the Maryland is tough because they could go win that game, but even if they don't, they're going to need a little help. But if Michigan helps them by beating Maryland, well, then that leaves Michigan in good position. So
yeah.
and Michigan has already beaten Indiana once at Michigan. Do they get Michigan anymore?
They don't. They only got the one shot at them. And it was tough because that was one of the games Mackenzie Holmes was out. And so, yeah, Michigan's a very, very good team, but Indiana didn't get to play them at full strength. So that's why.
And they played them very well. They
did. Yeah, it was close until Michigan pulled away at the very end. But they played them tough for the entire night. And so, yeah, tough to see that. But you hope that they can have a strong finishing stretch here, get Holmes back to full strength as you go into the Big Ten tournament, and then hopefully a deep run in the NCAA tournament.
Absolutely. Hey, we got one more quick break we got to take. Remax Realty is bringing us the segment to you. Make sure you reach out to Cheryl Sizemore if you're looking for a home in the Indianapolis area. Cheryl at IndyHomePros.com. Also, new restaurant in Bloomington on the Square, Cabello. Man, I ate there last night. It's amazing. It used to be Grazie, former Grazie, right off one spot off the square, going that would be north on College. But man, oh man, it's got to stop by. That food is amazing. Cabello on the square in Bloomington. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this. Whether it's a celebration or just a relaxing night away from the kitchen, don't make the same old choices. Try something. Oh, mercy me. I am tired, man. I shouldn't be, but I am tired.
You gonna go take a nap after we're done here?
I am if I can, but that doesn't really happen much. Man.
This team, like I went home on Tuesday night after the Wisconsin game. I didn't get home until probably 4:00 in the morning. Hate those 9 o'clock starts in Bloomington, man. Those are tough. But
I hate 9 o'clock starts any freaking where.
Yeah, exactly. But that team makes me tired. I was driving home from Wisconsin. I was like, man, it's just exhausting watching that team at half the time.
Yeah, it is. It's like building blocks. You got to keep lifting up blocks. You got to keep lifting up a block. It's like, damn it.
So what is the Greek fable about the guy pushing the rock up the mountain and never quite getting to the top? Is it Sisyphus?
Yes, sir, Will.
I'll be on next Wednesday and Friday as well.
You'll be doing what?
The show next Wednesday and Friday.
Oh, okay. What's Wednesday?
John said he won't be able to do next Wednesday or Friday. He has remotes to do.
He's killing me. Just kidding.
And then as well on the 3rd, the 7th, the 8th, and the 9th of March.
He's killing me. That's during the tournament, man.
Are you going to be at the women's Big Ten tournament down in Indy, Jim? If Indiana makes a run?
I won't be personally, but we will have somebody there.
Gotcha. I like how they do it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I might.
I like how they're doing it where they have it's in the same place and they just have the women's tournament 1 week earlier, so it kind of feeds into the men's. I think that's kind of cool where it's back to back.
I wish it would always be in Indianapolis.
Yeah. When's the next time they're going back to New York? Is that coming up here soon?
Is it even in the plan?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I've not been.
I don't know that. I've never heard that it's in the plan because it's so difficult scheduling wise. Because the Big East, has it booked forever for tournament weekend, and then the ACC, don't they also?
So, something like but they did it that
football and
they did it the 1 year in 2018.
Simply go to thehoosier.com and sign up. It's free. You can also find full episodes of Indiana Sports Beat Radio on the homepage or on the station every week, Monday through Friday. If we're not on a station where you live, we should be. Ask for Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
Welcome back. It is Friday. Hope you go out and have a great weekend. We got you set up for it. Or just a relaxing weekend. Is it going to be cold all weekend? I haven't looked at the forecast. I know it's still it's 21 degrees right now. Woo! Had a heat wave come in since we started the show. 3 degrees up.
It is going to be a little bit warmer by Sunday. It's supposed to be 40 and sunny. So at least up here in Fort Wayne.
Holy crap. Holy crap.
Look at that. We got spring on the way here.
Not done yet. Tuesday, Monday, it's going to be 59. Tuesday, 61.
Wow. Look at
sunbathing weather, baby. There's sunbathing weather. Don't get too excited. 2 days later, it's back down to 36. 30-degree swing, man. Almost. 25, whatever. I hate that. You get that I'll take it. Monday is just going to be absolutely exquisite. It's going to be 59 degrees during the day and only 54 overnight.
Wow.
Hang out.
It's getting close.
Teasing us.
I would be saying it's almost baseball season, but maybe not.
Well, actually, it is, isn't it? Doesn't it start soon?
Well, supposedly. Maybe not, though.
I think it's already started, hasn't it?
Well, college baseball season. Yes, college baseball.
Yeah.
IU opening day is today, I believe.
On the road.
Yep. At Clemson, I think.
John, our former IU beat writer from the Herald is down there.
Yeah.
John
Blau.
Yeah. Covering Clemson. So he'll be covering that game probably. Who knows? I wouldn't mind covering it because it's going to be a lot warmer down there in Clemson, South Carolina than it is in Bloomington, Indiana.
Yeah. We just had up here in Fort Wayne, we just had our Tin Caps, the high A baseball team that we had here in Fort Wayne. They had tickets go on sale on Wednesday for their season, the single game tickets. So that's kind of exciting. It looks as though they might be the only game in town when the professional baseball season starts, at least for a little bit.
Yep. Let's see. So, what do you got coming up? Anything that's out or coming up?
Well, this week I have, even though IU is not playing, I still have a full weekend of basketball. We have Saturday. We have the Garrett girls basketball team is in the semi-state. They are facing South Bend, Washington at LaPorte. I will be in LaPorte for that. And then Sunday, we have what has turned into a huge game in the Big Ten title race between Purdue and Rutgers. I will be down there in West Lafayette. We talked a little bit about it earlier. Rutgers has won 4 straight games against top 25 opponents. They get a chance to go for a 5th against Purdue, which is now in first place in the Big Ten. It's always interesting to me that I cover Purdue and IU, as I'm sure most of our listeners know by now, but it's interesting to see kind of the different ways those programs kind of go about their business. Seeing Purdue this year, they've had some tough games of their own, and seeing the way that they're able to kind of bounce back from some of those, and the way that Matt Painter goes about fixing some of the things that ails his program. It's interesting to compare and contrast with Indiana, and Purdue has obviously had a ton of success this year. They're 23-4, and at the top of the Big Ten right now. So it's an interesting counterpoint to some of the ways that IU has struggled to get over the hump this year. Is Purdue has scaled that mountain, and they've come out on the other side as one of the best teams in the country.
Yeah, fortunate for Matt Painter is having many guys in the system that are bought in, they're there, and he's got a ton of Indiana kids. So he's had a much more consistent roster, not had as much turnover while there have been guys that leave, but he always has the guys to replace them. A lot of times they're already there on the roster. Big difference between like next season, Indiana has no choice. If Race and Trace leave, they've got to hit the portal, and they've got to hit home runs there because they need guys that they can pick and play right now for that team next year to succeed. Like I said earlier, it's not going to be Logan Duncombe yet. He's obviously not. You don't play 0 minutes in a season and then fill a big hole like that next year. I just don't see that happening. I'm not doubting his talent. I've seen him play. He's going to be a good player. I'm shocked that he hasn't played more. Why? I don't understand, unless they are trying to redshirt him, which I thought that a redshirt had all but disappeared in these times. But why else would he just not play at all? I mean, why not sneak in? I don't care if it's 2 minutes on the court here and there. Why not sneak that in to get him any game situation you can get? I know that there's a reason for that. I'm not questioning Mike Woodson, but I am curious on why that has been the case.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair to him, there's not a whole lot of minutes to go around with Trace Race and Michael Durr taking the vast bulk of the minutes. But you're right. It would be interesting to see just a few minutes here and there, right? I feel the same way about Anthony Leal a little bit. Is that Anthony Leal has had a few games this year where he got to start and he played, and he's played fairly well. And I would like to see just few minutes here and there, right? I think, and this is another thing that goes back to the way Purdue does its business. Purdue has 10, 11 players on its team that could be rotation guys in most college teams, and they get their guy. Painter has done a pretty good job this year of getting everyone at least some minutes. Their Brandon Newman from Valparaiso has kind of fallen out of the rotation a little bit, but outside of that, they're running guys in there just for a few minutes here and there. But I do wonder whether it would behoove, at least for the future, for IU to get Leal and Duncan in there. Although on the other hand, what we've seen is that there have been times where Mike Woodson has gone to subs and things have gone very poorly, and you almost play your way out of a game a little bit if it's a close game. So maybe I understand a little bit why he's a little bit gun shy in that sense, but there probably needs to be at least some kind of balance there, I would think.
Yeah, Anthony Leal's another one that I do feel that same way, especially because so much issue has been made of a lack of shooting. He's from the sound of it, he's the only pure shooter on the team. I don't know why you wouldn't try to sneak him in there and let him take a couple shots, which he did have that opportunity against Northwestern, and Kevin Broccoli was on, so he was disappointed that he didn't take advantage of that opportunity. But I just don't think you can. One game in, that was such an important game. The pressure that was on, all the stuff that was being talked about with the suspensions, that's a tough spot to step into.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's tough because a shooter requires rhythm, right? You need, if you're a shooter, you need to play minutes in order to, and that's kind of why Newman has fallen out of the rotation at Purdue, is because he's a very good player if he plays 25 minutes a game, but if he's only playing 6, 8, 10 minutes a game, you're struggling to get into a rhythm on the court. And that's the problem with Anthony Leal, is you're not going to be able to just shove him in off the bench and have him hit 2 or 3 threes and then take him out again. It doesn't really work that way for shooters. You would wish it did, and maybe it would work that way every once in a while. But it's just a question of, can you get him consistent minutes? The answer on this team is probably not, unfortunately.
And there is a lot of guards coming in. So Zach that mentioned, Alec said that he thought to see 5 to 6 guys leave. That's nearly half of your roster. I mean, there's 13 on it. So if 6 guys were to leave, it's just 45%. That is a ton. Now we know that there probably can name 3 of them, but there's going to be questions for guys like Christian Lander, for Rob Finnessy, Parker Stewart. Those are 3 guys. If Trace and Race are gone, then that's where you start at. That's where you start looking with the guards that are coming in, who stays and who goes. It'll be interesting to see, but there's no point in predicting that, because I can predict it all I want. It's easy to predict it, but we'll see what transpires there. But I see change coming, because Mike Woodson wants to go a certain way, and that Northwestern mistake, I think, is going to be costly for some guys.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I think I think it's important to mention, we talked to Zach earlier, and he talked about how hurtful to the overall kind of Mike Woodson project missing the NCAA tournament would be, and how much of a setback it would be. I think he's exactly right about that. And I do think it's important to look at the flip side, which is how important it would be to make the tournament this year. Right? If you make the tournament, you feel like there's a clean break from the past. Even if you go in as a 10 seed and you lose by 12 in the first round, you made it, right? There's a clean break. There's a line of delineation between Archie Miller, who didn't make the tournament, and Mike Woodson, who has. And I think that helps you when you go out trying to recruit this offseason in the portal. That is something that you can point to and say, look, we are a program on the rise. And so I think that Indiana, these next 5 games, and Zach talked about needing to go 3-2. I think Indiana, these next 5 games, is in maybe its most important stretch of the early portion of the Mike Woodson era. There is going to be a huge swing between what missing the tournament means and what making it means. And it's kind of all or nothing. There's no in between there, obviously.
I agree. Those 3 games are the 3 most important games, and you just have to go win them. And it's not like you're being asked to do something that is beyond difficult for what you've already accomplished. Winning at home against Rutgers, I don't care if they have Ron Harper Jr. or not. You need to beat them. You're at home. You have to do that. Minnesota, it's on the road. I don't care. They're not that good of a team. You want to be in a tournament team, then you have to beat a non-tournament team such as Minnesota. And then the Maryland game, Maryland's playing well, but you've beaten them on the road. You absolutely must beat them at home. And so those are 3 games that I just don't see that you can lose. So you shouldn't lose them. You should go 3-2. Now, if you could pull out a win at Ohio State, well, that ends all the discussion there. It's over. You don't have to worry about talking about it. And it's up to them. They could do that. We've seen them play that way. It's to me, it's not Mike Woodson is pulling as much as the players making a freaking mental decision that, okay, we've got to start playing better basketball as a team. And I think they have to make that decision as a group, but not having that leadership. I think there's not division. That's not the word. I don't think that they're, I don't think they're having problems with each other, but Trace Jackson Davis should unequivocally be the leader on this team. He's a 3rd-year guy. He's, gets all the attention. He's the Indiana kid. He should be the leader. He's not. Xavier Johnson is it's like a pull between those 2 of sorts, but nobody is leading the team. So I don't see any leadership either. And that's catastrophic, really.
Yeah. And it's tough at this point in the season. And Trace, I think, clearly made an effort against Wisconsin to go out and say, I'm going to be the guy that rallies us. And for 38 minutes, it looked like that was going to be the case. And then the last 2, they just didn't get it done. And that's why it's frustrating, because you could see from the very beginning against Wisconsin that Trace had gone out and made a decision, at least in his own mind, said, I'm going to win us this game. And then it just didn't happen. And so can he get off the mat and do the same thing against Ohio State? Because Ohio State, we saw it earlier in the year, IU matches up well against them. They can win that game. Ohio State's playing very well, but they don't have a great big. They don't have someone who's going to go out and bully Trace in the post like Kofi Coburn has. Trace can go out and get 25 in that game. He did against Ohio State earlier this season. Can he get off the mat and do it again? And I think that's going to be a huge part of where they go the rest of the season.
Absolutely. Hey, make sure you give Dylan Sinn a follow at Dylan Sinn with the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. Can't thank him enough. Thanks to Zach Osterman. Thanks to Alec Lasley from thehoosier.com. Make sure you give all those guys a follow. And thanks to Will for filling in for John. Most importantly, thanks to you guys. Without you, we have no reason to be here. We'll be back on Monday to do it all again. Go out and have a great weekend, gameless weekend. Enjoy the Daytona 500. Until then, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.